This week on the Baseline Podcast, Josh and I break down the huge news of Tom Brady, the GOAT, retiring. Is this for the final time or will he come back? We'll discuss that. We also discuss the other big news coming out of the NFL, and one of them being pretty big in the sense of Sean Payton has been traded once again for his rights to be able to be a head coach, and that is to the Broncos. The Denver Broncos have acquired Sean Payton. It's kind of weird to say. But then we also move on to college football. We break down the coaching changes. We break down player movement. And then we finish up by talking about tennis. Is Novak Djokovic the greatest of all time? We'll talk about that all and so much more coming up on the Baseline Podcast. Hey, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Baseline Podcast. That's Josh. I'm Ben, and we are back. Josh, how is the weather over there right now? We've just had a bunch of slushy, weird rain, wintry mix. Have you had snow over there? Has it been snowing over there?
We've had a decent amount of snow last week, and then we had a lot of cold, but today the sun was out, and I think most of it's melted now. So it's been an interesting little spurt there. Cold the whole time, but we had like 10 degrees yesterday.
You know what's also melting? People's hearts, because the GOAT. Yes, people. We talked about it last year. We're going to talk about it again, but I think this could be it. The GOAT has retired. Tom Brady is calling it quits after 23 years, literally longer than most people that are in the NFL now have been alive. So it is fascinating to me, Josh. I wanted to open up with it. I know just for all you to be aware of as we go through this, we don't really have like a really main topic because there's so many crazy things that have been going on in the sports world. We thought, hey, why not this week before the Super Bowl happens? We touch them all. So we touch them all. We're going to touch a little bit about every little sport here and there. But anyways, focusing back on the GOAT retiring, Josh, give me your opening thoughts as you saw that break news here later this afternoon. It broke news, and his message, and what do you think this all means generally?
Yeah, I watched the video. I think when he retired the first time too, we kind of did like our huge, I guess, salute to Tom, and so I don't really talk anything about that. But yeah, the video this time, it was
more surreal, I think.
Yeah, maybe. And I think Tom might have had a little bit of a moment of realization too. Like the whole last season, I mean, he played good, but it was the first time he had a losing season. Bucks were, kind of up and down, and it just was kind of like a mistake almost. I don't know. But yeah, Tom, it's going to be interesting, man. Part of me is kind of like he can't go out like that, but part of me is also kind of like, now that he's had a losing season, hopefully he does call it quits here. And this is actually serious, because we kind of thought that the last time that, yeah, he's done, but is he? And now that he's done it once, I guess it's like, is anyone actually ever truly retired anymore? I don't know, but maybe now that the season went the way it did. I mean, you kind of hate to end it like that, but it could be worse too if he came back, possibly. So I hope that this is actually the for real end for Tom, and he doesn't come back just for the sake of his legacy, because I would like to remember Tom for all the Super Bowls that he won, and not just trying to hold on and cling to, like, I guess, the thin air out there, kind of like how Brett Favre did there for a little bit. But yeah, that's kind of, I guess, my summary in 60-ish seconds or less.
Yeah, I think it kind of reminds me of Ronaldo in a sense. Like, I feel like the last couple of years have been the same for Ronaldo. Like, he's not the same as he once was. He was at the peak. He was the best, right? And I think Tom Brady, for, let's be honest, our whole lives has been the best quarterback outside of maybe Peyton Manning. And now he's putting himself even higher than Peyton Manning. He is the greatest of all time. I mean, you can't argue with 6 Super Bowls, almost 90,000 passing yards.
Is it 6 or is it 7?
7. It's 7. Sorry, 7. 90, and you think about almost 90,000 passing yards if you include playoffs, which is just mind-boggling to me. I think it's almost like 650 touchdowns, I think, if you combine playoff and regular season. And we talked about this last year, and I want to just briefly say, I don't think there ever will be another Tom Brady. Just like the same thing we said about Peyton Manning and Drew Brees and all that. I think what makes Tom Brady, what makes this interesting is that we're really now, as soon as Aaron Rodgers decides what he wants to do next, we're pretty much, Josh, out of our era of when we were growing up. We're pretty much out of that era of quarterbacks. I mean, there isn't many left.
The playoffs kind of dictated that with how young everybody was, with guys like Herbert and Dak and Mahomes and Lamar technically and Burrow and Brock Purdy and Jalen Hurts and all these young QBs. It's like this is I guess their era now.
What would be your say, like, do you feel like this was sincere from Tom Brady? Like, do you feel like when you watch that, it wasn't like he's putting on a show, but he really meant it this time? Because I think last time he didn't make a video. Last time he just
Didn't make a
stated
video
something.
last time. It was kind of leaked secretly that he was going to retire, and then he kind of like followed up with that.
Yeah.
And the fact that it kind of happened this quick, like he didn't even entertain any, I guess, discussions with other teams, or maybe he already has. But before the season even ends officially with the Super Bowl, we're finding out that he's retired. So my guess is that maybe he's thought about this for a little bit longer, and maybe it's, I guess, more legit this time than last time.
Yeah, and I think at the end of the day, I think he's been through a lot this year, and I think he does need he wants to spend time with his family. He's 45, right? Like, I mean,
45, yeah. And
yeah,
he's been relied on more, I think, than ever. Like his attempts, I think he
yeah,
had
they've gone
career high
up.
in
Yeah,
attempts
yeah.
and stuff. It's like, and this is Tom at 45. Like, you can't really be using a guy like that
How
at that
mind-boggling
age.
is it for you, Josh, to realize that this man played until he's 45 years old? Like, is it hit you like this man literally played? We don't even see that in baseball. We don't see that in soccer. Like, this guy played till he was 45 years old. It's
Yeah.
crazy.
Usually only see kickers kicking until they're like 40s, if that. So it's wild, dude.
Yeah, and it just shows you they're built different. Like him and LeBron James are just built different. Those two humans are built way beyond what we I think can imagine. And it is interesting. I think we'll move on from the Tom Brady, but we just want to say from here on the Baseline Podcast, because obviously Tom Brady listens to this show. We want to say hats off to you, Tom Brady, for being the GOAT and having an incredible career with the Patriots and then with the Bucks. Obviously, we're gonna miss you out there, but you know, we
And
both
on
know
that
it.
note,
Yeah,
too, of talking to Tom, we do have an open invite if you want to come on the
that is
baseline
true.
to discuss, I
Explain.
guess,
Yeah.
all the thought that went into this and like why this is actually the last time that you'll retire. So,
And why you'll truly invest in the Baseline Podcast and invest your time and financial
right,
support.
like as he continues to go on and broadcast for Fox, the baseline will be like a little side gig that he does.
Yeah, and then he'll give us a private jet so we can actually do actual live shows. I don't know. That's just a
Yeah.
thought, Tom. Tom, it's just a thought. You don't have to do it.
You have
Just
a
a
lot of
thought
time
here.
now that you're
Yeah,
retired, so
just
it's
think
like
about it.
we're trying to help,
Yeah, we're just trying to give you something to do because we know you're going to be bored. And obviously we're bored. I mean, it's reality. If you do a podcast, you're bored. Like, I feel like that's like the thing is like, you
You
don't
have to
know.
have about a few hours a week of
Yeah,
not
like
doing
you're just
anything to
like,
be
you're
able to make
bored,
time
right?
for it.
You're
Yeah.
bored. No, but again, congrats, Tom, with all of that. I do want to mention something else. Speaking of quarterback in the NFL, what did you think of the old Huntley getting into the Pro Bowl? I'm sorry, I like literally want to just throw my phone. I was
I
like,
know, I
this
know
is
it's like
ridiculous.
technically as an alternate, but it's like if this is what the Pro Bowl is now, that people like Tyler Huntley can make the
So
Pro
dumb.
Bowl, who's scoring 10 points a game as a backup quarterback, like it officially is meaningless. Like they're not playing a game anymore. They're like doing all these mini games on a shortened field. And I mean, people lately have only been talking about all pros anyway. Like the Pro Bowl doesn't mean what it
As
did
much,
when
yeah.
we were kids and they were doing the game in Hawaii. It's just like, okay, well, eventually, I think they'll just do away with the Pro Bowl, Ben, because this is, like you said, like what are we doing here? It's the
Like,
king. This is like the Pro Bowl of, or the game of mid, or I don't know.
let's be honest though. Like, at least Jacoby Brissett could have been like at the altar. Like you could have chose any other quarterback that was half decent. Like, or
Yeah, I don't know. How do the alternates get? Is
so
that
this is the
tabbed by
thing.
the coaches, or is
No,
that like
I
the next
heard,
most votes?
yeah, it was the votes. So I'm pretty sure he had really high votes.
So Baltimore Ravens fans went hard for
Yes.
Tyler Huntley.
And so basically, after the three
Hmm.
other guys that he was below, like they were the three alternates, and then because I think a couple of them couldn't actually do it, it ended up going to him, and that's why everyone's kind of like, "This is like we get the fans should have a say, but let's be realistic. Like, okay, just skip over him. Like, act like that wasn't voted for. Like, move to the next guy, right?"
Yeah, like I think in all the other All-Star games, like when they do alternates, it's like the coaches pick.
Yeah, well,
I
even like
think.
even the NBA, right? They do fan voting, but then like the alternates are the next ones down the list. But but no fan's that stupid. I don't know what happened is the
Yeah,
question,
yeah,
right?
like you'll see some guys that like definitely shouldn't be in the top 10, but they're like eighth or ninth and like not gonna
Yeah.
start. But
Like Donovan Mitchell for the Cavs, he's starting. All the other stars make sense. Those are the stars for the NBA, and then you have the backups who are decent all stars. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with that. But I just thought it was very interesting that Tyler Huntley, like, no offense, Tyler Huntley, I'm sure you're a great person, but I'm sorry, right now as a football player,
Tyler Huntley, Pro Bowler, add it
you're
to the
oh
resume.
Jesus,
Add
please don't say that.
another,
Oh my
add
God.
another like zero to that second contract that he's gonna get now, right?
Yeah, well, no, the Ravens don't give second contracts. Remember, they just let them wind it down, and they'll probably let
Mm.
them walk. This is probably what's going to happen.
Pay
But
Tyler Huntley, pay Lamar
you
Jackson.
know,
You can do both, but they'll probably do none.
yeah, exactly. Or you could trade for someone. And speaking of trades, what happened this week, Josh, in the NFL that is a trade that you really wanted to bring up today on the show?
I mean, have we seen a head coach get traded not once but twice in his career ever?
No.
I think Sean Payton might be the first without doing any research
Yeah,
on
for
this
sure.
whatsoever to confirm this, but I haven't heard. I mean, we've heard of, I think, head coaches getting traded every
Yeah.
now and then, like very rarely, but now this is the second time. And on top of it, Ben, I didn't know that Denver had any first round
I
picks
know,
left to
same.
give after the Russell Wilson trade. So I think the deal was a 2023 first rounder and a 2024 second rounder to bring Sean Payton over. So
And they get a
Sean
24
Payton,
and they get a fourth round pick, the Broncos do. So the Saints send a fourth round pick in like 2024, I
yeah.
think.
So Sean Payton is back.
I
It's kind of
guess.
interesting that he
Yeah.
chose the Denver
Which is
Broncos and Russell
interesting.
Wilson to be the offense he runs after seeing how Russ cooked this last season. Are you shocked by that
Uh,
decision by Sean Payton to come back for this job?
I think I think there was a couple more places that looked more appealing in my eyes. I think Indianapolis, I think, would have been a great fit for Sean Payton. Part of me reason why I think that's not going to happen is because I think Jeff Saturday is in line right now to get the full-time
Apparently the
job,
favorite,
which
yeah, is
is
what the reports
stupid.
are.
Besides the point.
I don't think he did a
Um,
whole lot to, I guess,
no,
woo
he
Jim
didn't.
Irsay, but
They're golfing buddies. What can you say? And then the Carolina job, I guess, was interesting. Like, I
they
thought that
got
was,
Frank Reich. They filled
yeah,
that slot.
yeah. But I think for me, it just the weirdest one was this Denver job because you don't have really any future compensation to go get guys in the draft, and you have
Yeah,
Russell
like Denver
Wilson.
really is in a win now mode.
Yeah, and you have a Russell Wilson contract, which is huge. Like we've talked about, their defense is very solid. We've both been raving about their defense. The issue is the offense, and can he turn Russell Wilson like he's did with Drew Brees and turn him into a Hall of Fame quality quarterback? I don't know. Like, I don't know what Russell Wilson has left in the tank in order to
It's
give
harder
that.
to do too because you could argue that Russ is on the decline now. Like he's
Yeah,
not
exactly.
the same quarterback that he was, 5, 6 years ago. And then this Denver, I guess, season was like the big drop off. Like he was able to continue to push through kind of, and then he had like that season where it's like, okay, he fell off the cliff, if you will. And when you're as old as he is, it's really tough to climb back up from here, even with a change of scenery with the coach. Like I didn't watch enough Denver games to know if Hackett was like the one that was causing all this, but I gotta think that Russ had
Well, you
something to
pay
do
you
with
pay
it.
that much money. Like, there was more people complaining about Deshaun Watson, his struggles, than they were about Russell Wilson. I'm like, hold up. Deshaun Watson's missed a year and a half, and he looked half decent. Russell Wilson's just played last year. Why are we not doing the same? We're not giving the same criticism to both guys, and that was
Yeah,
what was
two
fascinating to me.
slightly different situations. I think the Browns gave up more to get Deshaun. I think Deshaun missed more time and also had a larger contract, so a little bit different. But yeah, we didn't really hear as much criticism about Russ, I think, or maybe we just already heard it all. And then since Deshaun came back and we saw him at the end of the season, it was like, okay, the Russ playing terrible story is tired. Now let's focus on Deshaun playing terrible and make that the new, big quarterback flop story. But
But
yeah,
with
it's
But
go ahead.
even the other thought was is that, I thought Houston would have been a good job, but then they went for D'Amico Ryans, which I think is a tremendous head coach. I think the Houston Texans finally did something
It's a
right.
good hire. Yeah,
They
San
finally did something
Francisco
right.
assistants have been some hot names lately. Robert Salah for the Jets, and now D'Amico Ryan's coming up. Like it's a nice spot
And
to
he used to play there, so he
if
knows the terrain. He
right.
knows that. So
Exactly. Yeah. So he has a little bit of invested interest too in seeing the team succeed.
And the question is then, what does he do with that first pick? What do they decide to do? They go to that quarterback route? Or they stick with Davis Mills? I don't think they will. I think they will go get a quarterback. But a lot of these teams, and we'll be coming out with our mock draft as soon as, like, I think the Super Bowl wraps up. We finally know the final recognition. That's what Josh and I talked about. We'll be able to kind of give you an idea of what we think. I know that I'm more leaning towards there's probably gonna be 4, maybe 5 quarterbacks taken in this first round. Yeah, that's
What could really shake it up too is if Chicago ends up trading this first overall pick.
Which I don't know if they will. I think if they're smart, they go after what they need.
A lot of that too. I don't know how much of that like is actually true and how much of it is just analysts talking like this is what they should do.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know if that's based on any reporter, rumor, or insight.
What do you think, Josh, for Sean Payton? Go back to Sean Payton. What do you think for Sean Payton? What do you think is his 2 biggest needs he needs to do this offseason, I think, to get this ship corrected? Like, what are the 2 things maybe on each side of the ball, or like just specifically, like as soon as he gets in there, this is what he needs to do?
Well, they got to get points. I think had Denver scored league average, they would have finished either 12-5 or 11-6 or something like that. So what was the big issue on offense? I think most people would say it was Russell Wilson. There was also some times where him and his receivers just looked out of sync too. Like I've seen some of the games where Judy would just drop easy passes, and I think there was some injuries to some other guys on the team.
The running backs were not healthy.
The running back situation, that was a tough situation too, with Javonte Williams getting hurt, and then I think they cut Melvin Gordon, and I don't remember who they ended the season with back there, but they just gotta find some rhythm and consistency and some health, man. And I don't know if there's just one thing that Sean Payton can do over there other than just I guess work really hard with Russell Wilson and try to build some of that chemistry like we saw with Drew Brees. Them 2 were like quite the dynamic duo there, and Sean started off with Drew too. I mean, we saw them together, I think, for over a decade, actually. Yeah. And he's not going to have that long with Russ, so it's going to have to be a lot quicker of a fix. I guess it's just getting those reps in, like getting that timing down, getting Russell comfortable, trying to find, I guess, what helped him in the past, like, and get it back. I don't know. It's just, I think it's going to take a lot of reps. We saw Tom Brady when he came to Tampa Bay at first. They were the ones that were doing all the workouts when everyone else was kind of chilling at home during the lockout. And Tom, meanwhile, is out here with all of his receivers getting all these extra reps. And I knew that would pay dividends, and they won a Super Bowl. But is that going to work for Russ? I'm not saying that's going to lead to a Denver Super Bowl, but I think they just got to get on the same page over there in Denver.
Final question about that is, do you think that the Broncos gave up too much just to get a head coach?
Just to get a head coach? It probably is. I don't know like what the buyout would have been or how long they would have had to have waited for Sean to become an official free agent. But I also don't think that there was anybody else out there that they could have gotten that's better. You know what I mean? Like there's not really any other hot names. I know everybody talks about
Jim Harbaugh. Jim Harbaugh, I know they interviewed him. I know they interviewed Jim Harbaugh.
Yeah. And so I think and Steve Wilkes, I don't know if he'll eventually become a head coach or not. But yeah, this was probably the best thing right here. And I mean, Denver really is in kind of a win now mode right now. So I guess if you got to give up a first round pick to win now, it's like you got to go and get those pieces to win now. Like getting a guy that's going to develop into a superstar in 3 or 4 seasons, by that point, the window is going to be closed. So I think they did what they had to do.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. And I think that it's just going to create an interesting storyline for the offseason and then for what they do this upcoming year as well. Josh, there's also been some news going on in college football. And it just seems like it feels like, and I know actually before we get to college football, let's just recap these NFL games real quick before we get to college football, because there's also news in college football.
Sure.
Josh, I know we both talked before the show. The 49ers versus Eagles game was not really a game. I mean, Brock Purdy gets hurt right away. And then basically it just wasn't a game. I mean, you had, by the way, Johnson coming in, and like the story of him is just awesome that, what he had, but then he gets hurt. Brock Purdy somewhat comes back in, and it just was an ugly game. And I think we both I think when that happened, I think everyone kind of was like, okay, well, this is pretty much over. Yeah, what are your thoughts and what are your thoughts on the Eagles getting to the Super Bowl?
Yeah, I really don't think that Philadelphia, what was the score? 31-7. I don't
Yeah.
think they're that much better than the
No, I don't think
49ers. It
so.
just sucks that we were kind of down to, I guess, lack of depth at quarterback for the 49ers. I know
Again,
initially during the game, everybody saw Brock throwing passes on the sideline. They were like, why isn't he coming back in the game? And now we know now that he had a torn, I
which is
think
kind
it's
of
UCL. So
which
he
that's
really wasn't
scary.
ready to
That's
go.
scary.
Yeah. So yeah, it's unfortunate. I got to bring this up since Bryce and I were talking about it. His Madden playthrough resulted in Philadelphia, I think, winning 31-0. His score prediction last week was 31-20, and we had a 31-7 final score, I think. So
Pretty on point.
he was pretty close, man. Yeah, he definitely knows his Eagles. So yeah, everybody's kind of complaining about, I guess, Philly having an easy run, playing the rebuilding Giants, playing the injured, I guess, hospital version of the 49ers. And it's like they earned this slot, man. They played all
Yeah.
regular season long to get the 1 seed to earn these matchups. Like that's what you get. You know, it's a perk of being the best team in the NFC. And the Kansas City Chiefs have had the same thing. Kind of
Yeah.
switching gears here. That was the more, I think, exciting game. I actually did my part and bet on the Bengals to win to guarantee that it wouldn't, since I've been in such a cold spell lately with my bets that I've been placing, Ben. So Kansas City comes out with the victory, and now this game with some of the calls that happened at the end is leading a lot of
Ridiculous.
people into the NFL is rigged camp, which not to toot my own horn, but I've kind of already thought about that in the past from other games that I've seen. So I don't know about this. What about this one made it any different? I know there were calls in the Philly San Francisco game that people were saying were just ridiculous too, that the officials just were doing a horrible job. They didn't really care too much about that one because of the final score. But in this Kansas City Cincinnati game, some of them may have led to Kansas City getting more favorable field position to get a game winning field goal there. Is the NFL rigged, Ben?
No. You play the game. Like
I don't know, man.
this is my
I
thing
don't
though. Like I
know.
get it. I get it. Like first off, that late hit by the fact, Osai, I feel bad for him. I mean, that poor
That
guy.
was the right call too.
It
That's
was the
that's
right
one that
call.
people are
Yeah.
pointing at. It's like that's roughing the
He
or
was out.
not roughing,
He
but
was out. He
late
was
hit out of
outside.
bounds.
Yeah. He
It's
was
like it's
outside.
exactly that.
This is my thing. I think, Josh, like, yeah, you can, I think of my dad, right? He used to say this, like, you can argue with the officials all you want. You can say they're bad, but at the end of the day, you got to make plays. And I think the
Cincinnati let
Bengals,
Joe Burrow get sacked four
yeah.
times in the first quarter.
And I think that's what,
Kansas City also had 3 receivers injured in this one.
like, you had it. If you're the
Patrick
Bengals,
Mahomes had
you
the
had it
high
where it
ankle
was.
sprain.
Yeah. Like, you had everything you wanted. And I think, you know, I think sometimes that the Bengals, and I think the Bengals lived in what I call a sophomore slump, but I guess in a playoff version, they thought, hey, well, we beat them last year and they're not as healthy this year. We're just going to go through and do it again. And I think I want to caution Bengals fans. Like, I know you're really angry, and if I was a Browns fan, I'd be angry too. But like, let's be honest, it was not really the refs 100%. It was really just you guys. You choked it. I mean, you had every
Yeah,
opportunity to win that
I
game,
feel like you can point to the refs if you did everything you could to win that
but you
game, and then you
didn't.
got screwed by a call. Kind of like Ohio State Clemson
Yeah,
2019, where like there was the controversial, I guess, ejection of Sean Wade and the controversial overturned fumble and complete pass situation. And it's like Ohio State had to kick 3 field goals in the red zone. Justin Fields threw 2 or 3 picks in that game. You let Trevor Lawrence kind of run wild for that 160-yard run. It's like you did all these things that really put you in a bad position. And then it's like, okay, well, in that case, a call like that is really going to affect you because you're not taking care of
yeah.
business on your end. And I feel like the Bengals kind of were in that situation too. And again, too, the offensive line issues, Ben, seeing that happen over and over and over again. I think Joe Burrow is eventually going to come to his senses and realize that the most success he had was when he left Ohio the first time. And I think he's going to learn from his mistake of coming to Ohio the second time that he's got to get out.
I don't think he will leave. He's an Ohio kid. And he loves that area. I
I
don't
am
mean as
I am kind of talking out of my behind right now. I think that he'll actually sign a second contract, and
he'll stay.
Cincinnati
Yeah,
will be smart with that. But are they ever going to fix this offensive line issue, man? I mean, they apparently did this offseason, and it doesn't look like they really
the thing is,
improved it all.
it's had been better, but I think what happened is that again, I honestly believe the Bengals just underestimated the Chiefs. I don't know how you can say that, but I think they did. Like I think
Well,
they
the
saw
other thing too, man, Burrowhead Stadium.
That
Like,
okay.
what are you putting that out there
Hey,
for,
it's
man?
like Travis Kelsey said, know your role, you jabroni, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Which actually I found out later was a much cooler quote than what it was. I thought he was just saying like a
no,
lot
it's
of
The
lame
Rock.
stuff to
Yeah,
keep it
no, it's The
clean on
Rock.
TV. And yeah, then I hear it's this famous rock quote, and I'm like, oh, that's actually
No, this is
cool.
the thing though, is that like the funny thing, if people don't realize why that's so ironic, is the fact that both him and his brother, who by the way will play against each other, we'll talk about that in a second. Both him and his brother went to Cincinnati to play college football, and they're from Cleveland area. And what's so funny is the fact that he said that, and then the next day on his podcast, he wore Cincinnati gear, like University of Cincinnati gear. So I just think it's very hilarious how this whole thing is blown up. But let's just quickly, before we move on from the NFL, briefly talk about that, Kelsey matchup. I thought the coolest quote from the weekend was, all I know is that my mom is going to be a true champion and like she's going to win. And I think that is the coolest thing to see these two guys. Like, what is it? What do you think it would be like to be on the other side against your brother for a Super Bowl? I think it'd just be really cool.
I mean, man, it's forever bragging rights. It's like when
100%.
John Harbaugh and Jim Harbaugh go to Thanksgiving dinner with the family. It's like John has the Super Bowl over Jim, and
Yeah.
now forever and ever, Jason or Travis is gonna have bragging rights.
And
And
it's like Jason said. He goes, he's had everything. He's had all the all pros. He's had all
yeah,
the bowl. He's been an all star, not an all star, a
all
Pro
pro.
Bowler. He's been an all Pro Bowler. He's been all these records. He's going to be a legit Hall of Famer. And he goes, all I want is that one. I just want that one ring to have
Travis
above
does
them
have
all.
one. Doesn't Jason have one?
Yeah, he does, but I think what he means is like having that one thing that's like compared to his brother. Like I have one more than
To
you, or
one
like
up Travis. Okay,
yeah,
I
to
got
be
you.
able to like
Yeah.
have that
To
one
say, yeah,
thing.
both of them have been all pros, I believe. Both have been Super Bowl champions. Both have been or are probably going to be future Hall of Famers. But yeah, that is, I guess, one way that they could one up the other, I guess, if you want to argue,
Yeah.
because there is a very good chance that at the end of their careers, Jason's going to be the greatest center of all time, and Travis could be the greatest tight end of all time.
Fun fact: Travis Kelsey was trying to go to college as a quarterback. Fun fact.
And I think
So
Jason too got put on offensive line and was a different position, if I remember correctly. He had to
yeah,
grow into a center, I think.
yeah.
We'll have to
So
check on that after the episode. I'm
all
not
I
going to
know
correct it
is
now if I'm wrong, but
it's going to be a heck of a Super Bowl. We're going to preview that next week, but more for football. We'll focus on that next week. But we will talk briefly here about college football. Josh, what was the one thing you wanted to talk about, or a couple of things here you wanted to talk about some player movement and a coach movement for college football?
yeah. So first off, I think this came out a little after we recorded last, so it didn't come on last episode. But Miami fires Josh Gaddis,
Finally.
who ran one of the worst offenses in the country. And I don't know why it took Mario Cristobal this long, because he's had basically since the end of November, early December, since Miami didn't make a bowl game or make a conference
Yeah.
championship. So Josh Gaddis has sat on staff here all of December, all of January, pretty much. And then Mario's finally like, you know what? We got to get this guy out of town. It's like, why did you take so long? Because now you've like missed the cycle of like all the big coach
Does
movements. You missed out on being able to go and get a guy like Garrett Riley. I mean, there were other names that were kind of moving around there too, but it's
They're
like
saying
you missed
Heartline
the
now.
window.
They're trying to get Heartline. I'm like, dude, he's already been promoted.
At
Like
this
he's not
point,
going to leave.
Heartline's already been promoted. Yeah, he's not leaving Ohio State, so you did miss out on that chance too, if there was one. So now
Because he played for the
Miami.
Dolphins. That's why they said Heartline, because he played for the Dolphins. So there's like that connection.
Okay, that's kind of a stretch, but like Ohio State's alma mater, I think that's winning.
But also, like
over that
the question is,
opportunity.
does Gaddis go back to Michigan? There's an open coordinator role in Michigan because they fired one of their offense
There
coordinators.
is.
Does Gaddis
There
go back to
is.
Michigan? And does that mean Chris and Zach Smith get to just batter him again in their podcast? Because
Yeah,
I love watching it.
I heard the boys over at Menace too bring up maybe he'll just go back with James Franklin at Penn State, because I mean that's kind of like where he really exploded. He was on Franklin's staff at Vanderbilt when they won like basically the most games that Vanderbilt football has ever won, and then he followed him to Penn State. So I guess that's where he's had the most success. At Alabama, he was the co-coordinator with Mike Locksley, and Mike Locksley was the one calling plays. Then he goes to Michigan. Gets kind of, I guess, removed from calling plays later on. The offense improves, and now we see him go to Miami, and the offense is bad. It's like he cannot call plays. Like maybe at this point, he's better off just being a wide receiver coach, because I think he's had decent receivers everywhere he's been. So maybe that's just all he is, a wide receivers coach and nothing more than that. And that's fine. But yes, at this point, it's like it's going to be tough for him to find another job, I think, because we've seen him start off at Alabama, move to Michigan, which is, I guess anybody would say that's like a downgrade. And then the Miami, also kind of a downgrade. And now he's out of there.
I will say though that I since I've been calling plays at practice for football, I'm coaching football over here in Hungary, and since I've been calling plays, like just helping like do practice scripts and stuff, and I will tell you how hard it is. But I can only imagine what it's like at the college level, and if you're not good at it, it does not help your team. So, yeah, it's very fascinating. We'll see what happens, the shift and the dynamic of that. But he wasn't the only coach that was added, or sorry, coaching change that happened. Josh, what else happened, coaching change wise?
We saw James Laurinaitis become a defensive grad assistant, I guess, which I think that's a made up job that they gave him just so he could be on staff.
Yeah.
Honestly.
It's basically like a quality control assistant, but they can only have so many of those. So grad assistant, basically, I think he has to take like one class a semester. And basically it's like he did the same thing at Notre Dame. So if people don't know, he was so people don't know about James Laurinaitis, a college football Hall of Famer, one of the best linebackers. I don't care who you root for. He's one of the best college linebackers of all time. 3-time All-American, Butkus Award
right up
winner.
there with Chris
AJ Hawk.
People say, I would say AJ Hawk, Ryan Shazier.
Yeah. I mean,
he's the reason that you think of Ohio State and you associate it with good linebackers, which is why it's weird that they haven't really had any good linebackers lately.
Since last year they did. But you have Laurinaitis, who played for the Saints in the NFL, had a good NFL career, shorter NFL
was it
career.
Saints? I know he was drafted by the Rams.
He played for the Saints as well at the end of his career, the Rams. Okay. Had a good NFL career. Then he went to announcing, and then I guess he tried to get into Ohio State the last few years, and they kind of were just like hesitant about it. So he goes to Notre Dame to go coach with his former teammate Freeman, and be a grad assistant there. And then now Ohio State must have convinced him, or I don't know how that worked, but convinced him, which I guess supposedly listening to insiders, is already working on the recruiting trail, because there's already 2, 4, 5-star linebackers that are like now interested in Ohio State when they weren't, when they had the other previous coach that left to go to Tulsa. So for me, it's very interesting because I think James Laurinaitis it's going to be a similar. I heard this, and I think you might agree with me on this, Josh. But I think it's going to be a similar route that what Brian Hartline took at Ohio State, where he came on as like a quality control grad assistant, NFL talent, former huge Ohio State football player, guy who's everyone knows, great on the recruiting trail. And I think you build him up to being, let's say, a linebackers coach, and then after a while, a defense coordinator. You can agree with me or not, but I think that's the route they're trying to do, is they're trying to get a guy that's well known. Hey, I know what it's like to be a Ohio State football player. This is why you need to come here. What do you think about that?
Yeah, it's a possibility. I mean, we've seen some other guys try to come back and coach after they were great players, and just because you could play well doesn't mean you can necessarily coach well. But this is kind of like a nice, I guess, test, because I think Jim Knowles is technically the linebackers coach right now, so he'll be working under him. I don't know how involved he will be with coaching linebackers, but it is kind of like a little trial run, I guess, to give him. And if he does well enough in this role, maybe they work it out so that he can become the full-time linebackers coach here in a couple of years if he proves himself on the recruiting trail in practice. And maybe he gets springboarded up into like a similar path that Brian Hartline had.
Yeah, it's crazy. But you know what's also crazy, Josh, is the fact that NIL, we thought, had a big swaying momentum in many places, including your Florida Gators. And it looks like Florida Gators just let one slip right under their rug and go crawling back to Arizona State. Interesting.
Yeah.
Josh.
So Jalen Rashada, the number 31 player, I think, in the 2024 class, if I remember right.
2023, I thought it was 2023.
Is it 2023?
Yeah.
I thought he was the same class as Real, or maybe I'm wrong. But 31 in whatever class he's in. But yeah, he had the national letter of intent signed with Florida. There was apparently this name, image, and likeness agreement that was set in place. And then for one reason or another, Florida couldn't, I guess, honor that, the collective. So Jalen Rashad is like, well, if I'm not going to get this money that you said I was going to get, I don't want to come to the school. And they let him out of his national letter of intent, and he opened up his recruitment again. So I guess it was inevitable that something like this was going to happen. We did hear rumblings that Jordan Addison apparently wasn't getting everything he was promised going to USC. The word was $13.5 million over 4 years for Jalen Rashada. And I guess Florida either didn't have the money or they just were trying to back out of it, which pretty crappy on their end if that's the case. So
Yeah.
it's kind of all. It's honestly also kind of like good riddance. We don't need a kid that's coming in here without doing a single thing on the field, making money. So yeah, I guess after that, he's such a good player that the only school that he could get into was Arizona State, which apparently no NIL was discussed or thought
Nope.
about in this second recruitment process. So that's definitely why he chose Arizona State, because it's just because of their track record of developing elite quarterback talent. So
I
that's where
can tell
Jalen
you,
Rashad is at right
I
now.
can tell you're a little salty there, Josh.
Not a
You're a
little
little,
salty. It's just kind of like a good riddance. Like I think we dodged a bullet there, but that's kind of like on my end. I think it was inevitable to happen. It's just unfortunate that it happened to Florida, that a big thing like this happens. But we've seen Nick Saban come out
yeah.
recently too and say that there's other kids that are saying, give me $500,000 and get my, girlfriend in Alabama law school. And he's like, see ya guys. Like, you're gonna come here and get yours, but I'm not gonna be strong armed in any NIL deals. And I think Nick Saban
I think most
is a
coaches are
big
going to
enough
start
name
doing
that
that.
he
I
I
think most
think
coaches,
I
yeah.
yeah, and I think Saban's a guy that can get away with that too, because it's like you're gonna come to Alabama, you're gonna become a first round pick, and then you'll get your money off of your name, image, and likeness. We're not gonna give you any cash on proven and not doing anything. And if that's your main focus, like that's not really going to fit into Alabama culture, I feel like
And for
anyway.
and first off, what happens if that girlfriend breaks up with you? Then they've just paid for some random person to go to law school that has no
Right.
association anymore. Just
Yeah.
saying.
Yeah, so I think it's all going to level itself out. We've talked about it in past NIL discussions. Like now that Rashad has had a falling out right there with Florida's
Addison.
collective, I think, and Addison apparently it wasn't low enough though that he couldn't go to the school. He continued on with his agreement, I guess, to go. But yeah, I think you're going to see more coaches not get strong arm into those kind of situations. And Nick Saban's leading the charge in that, per usual, being the best coach in college football.
And I will say on the player movement is that Ohio State did land the top cornerback still uncommitted in the transfer portal from Ole Miss. He started last year as a freshman, so Ohio State gets some help, which, as you know, I've talked about multiple times. I was very worried about what's going to happen next year in the cornerback room. They did get some help, which he's about 6'2", so I think that's going to be a good addition for Ohio State.
It's a good size.
Good size
A lot of
corner.
a lot of Buckeyes that I've heard discussion about at the Senior Bowl right now too.
Yeah,
Just knocking out the bad out of the way. Ronnie Hickman's apparently not having a good time. I
yeah,
saw a clip
yeah.
of him getting burned on a couple plays, but to be fair, he's also a safety and he's playing one-on-ones, trying to
Yes,
defend slants, which is very hard to do even for good corners. But DeJuan Jones, Ben,
dude, he's a
I knew
freak.
DeJuan Jones was big.
He's
I
a
did not
freak.
know he was huge. And I knew that he was
Freak.
big because when I would watch him play, like his football helmet, they could never get one big enough for him
No,
because
never.
his whole nose and mouth would be underneath the face mask. You could see the whole back of his head because the helmet was just kind of fitting like a hat. Like this guy is just so huge. And then we get that confirmed that his wingspan is 89.5 inches long,
Which is
which is 4 inches longer
ridiculous.
than Giannis Antetokounmpo and about a foot longer than his actual height, I
Oh
believe.
yeah, and by the way, Antetokounmpo is also 4 inches taller than DeJuan Jones. Just to
Yeah.
put that in perspective.
So I know there was a little bit of a hesitancy and discussion in Ohio State fan community that maybe DeJuan should come back because he's not quite ready yet.
No,
But it
he's
looks
ready.
like he's
He's
measuring
fine.
up like an NFL
and
tackle at
and
least.
and he's dominating. Like I've watched plays, like he's not letting many things happen against him, and I think DeJuan Jones is going to be he's going to be a great player, a very underrated player, but a good player. But Josh, that is football talk. What other things do we want to touch on before we wrap up today's episode of the podcast? I know you got a few other things that have been happening lately here in the world of sports. And by the way, Jared, we're not going over the soccer transfer window because there's about 150 million deals that happen, and we'd be here all day. If you
Wasn't
want
there?
to,
Can we talk about one because it looked like the Saudis offered Messi a huge
I mean,
amount of
they've been
money.
offering everything, but no one's moving. This I will say about soccer. I just want to put this perspective for you, Josh. Um, so there was a Super League a few years ago that was supposed to happen. They were trying to get this Super
Yes,
League
I
based on the
remember
best
this in
team. Yeah,
college,
yeah,
and it seemed like a good idea to me, the
yeah.
non-soccer fan. But all the soccer fans said,
No, they did it.
"No,
They hated
bad."
it because they said, "Oh, it's going to bring all the money into one place." But it's kind of funny because a lot of those were English fans, and now the Premier League. This by the way, this transfer window alone. So in January, they spent $1 billion, all the teams combined, And everyone else, I think the next league was like close to like 30 million, 40 million. So it's like basically there's a possibility the Super League has already existed because now all the money's in England. But fun fact, the biggest team to spend was Chelsea, who's owned by, I don't know, an American businessman who spent $618 million on players this transfer window. They actually bought more players than they have wins this season. Just
Dang.
thought that's kind of funny.
That's quite the NIL collective they got going.
That is a nice NIL collective. And so, Jared, if you want us to talk more, then you need to talk to me and we'll get you on the show. We can talk about moves and
We
stuff.
can't get him on for talking about Bengals Super Bowl preview, but
Yeah,
maybe we can get him on for soccer.
Yeah, we'll get him on for soccer.
Yeah.
But no.
But speaking of other sports that people
Yeah,
don't really watch, tennis, Ben.
Yes,
Australian Open, the first Grand Slam kicking off the season. Novak Djokovic is back on top after being banned last season, deported, I believe, because
deported,
of
yes,
vaccine issues. He comes back, continues his streak, I believe extends it to 28 straight match wins in the Australian Open. His 2019-2020 fourth Australian Open in the last 5 years. He owns that court, and he returned this year. Now that Australia is not a prison state anymore, and brought the title back home to Serbia. And he also tied Rafael Nadal for 22 Grand Slams. Now that most of the countries are opening up and Novak's going to be able to compete again, I think he's going to start to cruise past Nadal and just extend that gap even further. Like Rafa's probably going to win the French Open since that's, his court. He dominates the clay, but depending on if the U.S. Open allows him to play, like this could be like Novak's breaking point.
Well, I will say, just because my wife is Hungarian, that right now the U.S. is not open to non-Americans that don't have a vaccine. I'm just stating a fact.
I don't remember when the U.S. Open is, so there's technically still time, but it's not looking like that's a possibility.
You know who runs this country, right? America, right? Okay,
We do.
Okay,
yeah.
Just that's my political joke for the day. But I think it is fascinating because Novak is I have a friend, Trey, who I worked, Trey Barnes,
Yes.
loves tennis. And
Johnny Gaunt, fifth and goal, loves tennis.
And Johnny as well. And so these guys, they always talk about these different back when we were in college, it was really a three-way, and obviously Federer's retired now. Nadal's getting close to the end of his time. Novak is older, but I think
Novak is 35, but I think he's the healthiest of the, I guess, the three leaders in the sport.
So it'd be very interesting to see what happens. Novak, I mean, again, I think what's so fascinating about tennis is that it feels like every tournament, it's kind of like golf in the sense, like every tournament, someone could have just a really good few matches, and they're trying to win a title. And I think that's the same with you think of Tiger Woods, right? When he passed, what was it? Was it Nicholson? No. Yeah. Who was it? Nicklaus.
Phil Mickelson or Jack Nicklaus?
No, it was Jack Nicklaus, right? He passed him for the most grand, or what, I don't know what we call him in the golf. But anyways, when he got that big gap, right? And we said there will be never one that will never pass, right? But I think but I think it's just like my dad. But I think the funniest thing is that now I'm just off topic. I'm rambling now because I don't know what to say. But by the way, I'm leaving this in. Anyways.
Okay.
But anyways, it's so funny because we were talking about, because I had a friend that was telling me like Novak getting ahead of Nadal and Federer and kind of truly giving that that way of a gap. I think it does become more like a Tiger situation where who is going to reach it? Like right now, who's going to reach Tiger in golf? Who's going to reach Novak unless someone goes on a crazy run? If he keeps playing the way he is, I don't know if anybody will catch him in the future.
22 Grand Slams is a lot. I believe the most all time in pro tennis is, I forget the woman's name, but she's got 24. I know Serena Williams has 23, and then Novak and Rafa now both have 22. So if Rafa can hold on for maybe another couple years, I know that lately he's been having some more injury concerns. And I mean, man, dude, this could be especially if Novak can get in the U.S. Open too. Like this is going to be
This is his time. This is his time.
This is Novak's time for sure. Yeah, because like you said, Federer's already retired. Rafa's starting to deal with injuries a little bit more often, and the only thing that's going to hold Novak back is, I guess, bans by the
Is the
United
government.
States.
Is the
Yeah,
government. Is
because I
basically
believe
what it
he
is.
compete in Wimbledon. I believe he compete in the French, but the U.S. is not going to be a possibility, at
Because
least
the
of right now.
US decides it controls everyone's destiny. That's what we decide as Americans. Because
That
that's
is what was work
fortunately.
agreed.
But it is fascinating though. We think about all these different, and it's kind of funny that we talk about this today because you look all around and obviously there's, you look at soccer, it's the same thing, right? Like we're seeing the end of so many guys' careers, American football, baseball, basketball. And I think it's even more, I think it's a perfect time to switch real quick to an NBA talk, but we see LeBron, creeping in here on the all-time scoring leader. He's 89 points, I believe, from passing Kareem as the all-time leading NBA scorer. And we were talking about Novak of now really putting this thing out of reach. I think we can talk about the same thing when we talk about the NBA and LeBron. I mean, the way he's playing this year, he could probably play another 3-4 years, maybe, until he's 42, right? 43. Do you think LeBron's going to put this? Does he reach like 50,000 career points? Like, is that possible? Does he keep playing that long?
50,000.
I mean, does he keep playing? Like, we don't know how long, because we said Tom Brady, right? He's
Well,
going to
let me
retire when
let me
he's
just
40.
put that in perspective because I believe Kareem's record's around 38 or 39,000.
38, just
So,
38 and a half, I think.
and if LeBron averages over 2,000 points, that means he'd have to play another 5 years to get to 50
Yeah.
ish. And he's also, like these last few years, not been scoring as much because he's moved into more of a point guard role.
And yet he's still averaging like 27 points this year.
Yeah, like being able to adapt like that is a big reason why he's, able to maintain this longevity. But it's just like you never know, like when it's actually going to happen. Like Tom Brady at 45 finally caught him. LeBron, I don't know when it's finally going to catch him, but I feel like basketball, especially, there's a lot more running around for him, and we have seen him. Not that he's been injury prone, I won't say that, but he has had a little bit more injuries these last few seasons with the Lakers than we've seen him in his previous seasons in Cleveland. I guess the rest of his NBA career, he's been able to stay incredibly healthy. And if he can maintain that health and not have to be relied on as the main guy, I think 2,000 points on average would be pretty reasonable. Now, can he play for us? Because I don't know if LeBron's going to want to play much longer. When Bronny's going to be coming up, I think he definitely wants to play a season with him. I don't know how long he would want to play with him, though.
Yeah, so he would have to go. So next year, so he'd have to play at least 2 more years for sure to get one season with Bronny, and then how much more does he want to play?
Which I think is definitely going to happen, and I don't think that there's ever been another father-son combo on the same
there hasn't.
team
I don't
or
think
even
so.
in the same league at the same time. And I've maintained the thought that whatever team drafts Bronny is going to get LeBron in a free agent contract package deal kind of thing.
I would love it to be Cleveland because I think it would just be funny, but I don't think it's going to happen. I'd love it to be Cleveland, but I don't think it's going to happen. But and that's just, I think it's the NBA times are shifting too. I don't know, Josh, how much you're paying attention to the NBA or anything. I've just been keeping track of things, but I think it's the same. Like you have these veteran guys that are kind of leaving the league, and you look at the All-Star rosters this year. I mean, it's a bunch of young dudes outside of LeBron. I mean, and Steph. It's pretty much all these young guys, which is awesome to see, and it's cool to see. And I know they're trying to do different things with the All-Star game this year, and it's cool to see this new age of NBA. I'm not a big NBA fan. I'm more of a college basketball fan, but Ohio State sucks right now. They're like 11-10, so we don't really talk about it. And the Ohio State women's was good this year, and then they started losing again. So, as a basketball fan, I'm just here to commentate and then give my predictions for playoffs and then draft lottery and all that fun stuff. That's what I'm here for, Josh.
All right, yeah. Carolina's been maintaining its success. Like I think they're 15-6 right now, so they really just you take that cold spurt away where they lost to like 4 unranked teams in a row or something like that, and they only got 2 losses this season. So hopefully that means that they have figured it out. Maybe they can even end the season ranked in the top 25.
I will say for all of you listening or watching, please in the comments or message us, DM us, let us know if you want us to do when the brackets come out, if you want us to do a bracket challenge between Josh and I think it would be fun. And I think it would be a challenge. Maybe we could get like some of our guests to come on and do it with us or something like that. So let us know in the comments what you think a challenge like that. Anyways, Josh, do you have anything else to add for today's show? Do you have anything else to add you want to talk about briefly before we go?
I think we got everything covered. We talked about everything that I think
it was
a
weird one. It was a weird episode today, but it was a good episode.
There was a lot of things on Instagram you said that we'll talk about. So I think that we
covered
checked all the boxes.
I covered them.
I think we did. Yeah, not like one dominating story on this one, just like a lot of different things happening right now. So it's just quick hits here, quick hits there. So a little bit change of pace from the, I guess, typical format. But next week we'll have a much more, I guess, set topic, unless we have a couple other crazy side stories to discuss. But we're gonna have Bryce on next week to talk about the Philadelphia Eagles perspective for the Super Bowl, and I guess Ben and I will explain to him why the Kansas City Chiefs are gonna win. I don't know, but should be a good time. And then Bryce will also bring us some UFC knowledge, because we got some more big fight cards coming up. So next week's episode, you're not going to want to miss it.
No, for sure. It's going to be action packed. And also coming up, I'm sure Josh and I will be figuring this out, but coming up in the next few weeks, we're going to have our first mock draft of the NFL. We'll have more NBA, college basketball updates as the brackets get out. Obviously, let us know in the comments if you want us to do some type of bracket challenge, because I'm obviously going to win, because lately I've just been beating Josh in every competition we do. It's just reality. I'm sorry, Josh. It's just, it's about as stealthy and awesome as your dad was walking through the backside of the camera. Just being honest. It's very stealthy. The whole crouch and crawl behind the couch.
The crouch after he's already in the shot,
was on point. Just want to say that he is more athletic than anyone on Michigan's roster. I'm just kidding. Sorry, that was a Michigan joke. I'm sorry. Anyways, I'm getting off on the sidetrack. But anyways, I hope you all enjoyed today's episode. Again, it was a little different episode, so give us some love. Make sure you're sharing it. Make sure you let everyone see it, because I think there are some fun stories, especially with the Tom Brady, our thoughts on Tom Brady, our thoughts on the different things going on in the NFL as well as in college football and so on. So let us know what you think. Comment below, whatever you would like. If you love the episode on YouTube, go ahead and click that thumbs up button, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, where you can see all of our old episodes, because we haven't changed much, realizing that we've been doing this now for over a year, Josh. I didn't say that last episode, but we've literally been doing this now together for a year.
Sick.
So it's gone so fast. And this is episode 76, which is kind of crazy of the podcast. And we've been doing this for a year, Josh. How do you feel? I didn't ask you that. You feel like you're older, or you feel like we're just the same as we were,
I don't feel too much older.
I feel like you're more relaxed now, and you're not hunched over like a Hunchback of Notre Dame.
Yeah, it's just the setup's better now since I've gotten better at making setups.
Crouching over your laptop, which gave you back pain.
I hate the setup like when you're like this. So it's like when you can kind of be more like personable and just like chatting with a friend. I like that better. So
hey. Well, we like you,
getting
Josh.
better at this podcast thing the more we do it.
You are for sure, and I am still working on it, but we're getting there. Let us know in the comments, who's the better podcaster, Ben or Josh? Let us know in the comments. Last time everyone chose Josh, which was really annoying. But
what was the question?
I think we asked like who had the better hair all the time, and it's always you. Well, you can't.
That's your go-to question. But I thought you asked something else last time.
No. I always ask that one. No. I always ask. This time it's who's better podcaster. So let us know in the comments. And if you're listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, make sure you favorite it, whatever you do, share it with your friends, listen in the car, whatever you're doing. And we hope you have a tremendous weekend full of craziness going on, I'm sure, with basketball and things like that. And then obviously the Super Bowl next weekend, we will be covering it with Bryce coming on. And until then, have a great weekend, and we'll see ya.